Welcome everyone to the training webinar series, Eyefinity Encompass using Glyph Tools and the Drawing Board on the iPad presentation. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to your questions throughout the presentation. You can enter them by clicking on the Q&A icon on the top of your screen. My name is Linda Park, and it is my pleasure to be with you today to introduce Mike Lockhart. Mike has more than 14 years experience as a software educator. He's a functionality expert on Eyefinity Encompass. He was born and raised in New Orleans and enjoys spending time with family and friends, especially his 2-year-old son, Elijah. Mike is known for his Southern hospitality. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great afternoon this evening. As discussed before, like today, we're going to go over using your glyphs and the drawing board specifically on the iPad. Now, a lot of people don't really use this functionality, and I think that's because a lot of people aren't really aware it exists. So what we're going to do today is kind of take a dive into that to show you guys around how to implement these glyphs, how to use the drawing board, and how it can benefit you in your documentation. So let me go ahead and 1 second here, share my screen with you. Okay, Linda, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. All right, so all I have here, let me kind of take you guys back from the beginning just so you can see exactly where I'm going and whatnot. But right now I'm just on the home screen of the iPad. Now this is through the iPad application. So this is only going to be available if you use the actual iPad application. It's not going to be available to use the drawing board through the browser. You do have access to use Glyphs on the browser, but on the iPad you have access to use the Glyphs as well as the drawing board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up one of our test patients here. I'll just go to my Bobby test. And once this loads up, we'll be able to get into a visit, do some demonstrations. Should not be taking that long. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So all I'm going to do is I created a visit right before this webinar that we're going to be using today. So I'm going to click on my September 16th visit just to go ahead and get into that visit that I had created. Okay, now as you can see here, I've already gone in, I put in a chief complaint, I put in a history of present illness, review of systems, vision exam. And in the ocular exam, all I did, and right now we're on our waffle view, which if you look up on the top right side of your screen, you've got the 2 different blue buttons. One has the 6 white boxes on it. This is what we call the waffle view. But then right next to it, you have what we call the pancake view, which is going to be those blue lines that are kind of stacked up right next to each other. So I'm going to switch this over to the pancake view just for a second, all right, to kind of show you what was put in here. So let me go ahead and get down to our exam section, all right. Now I'm going to go ahead and let's just reset this maybe. Oh, that's all right. Okay, so right now with the exam set, the only thing that I've done is I said that everything was normal. I put in a cup to disc ratio. You can see that's in bold writing here. I've got my CD ratio at 0.3 for both eyes. Everything else is in that normal font, which basically just means that it's telling you it's pulling in the normal findings for those specific sections. Now, one of the ways that you can add findings, aside from just coming here and choosing simple eye exam, which would allow you obviously to just go ahead and type in whatever finding you want to include. All right. You can definitely add findings this way just by searching for them. But with the glyphs, you actually have the capability of adding an image of the finding that you're using um, to better give you a picture of exactly where that finding is going to be located. Now, from this pancake view that I'm in right now, it's not going to give you the access to add the glyphs from this screen. So another reason why I took you here first. So what we have to do is we need to switch it back up on the top right to that waffle view. Okay. So now that I'm in that waffle view, I'm going to go ahead and get into my ocular exam. All right. Okay. So now when it comes to your Glyph tools, if you look at the very top right corner, there is an option that says Glyph tools. It's going to be underneath the blue links that say drawings, draw, camera. There's just an option, a white tab that says Glyph tools. Now, these are going to be selected outside of your documentation for a diagnosis. Like you wouldn't be saying, patient has a myopia diagnosis. I want to go ahead and add these plans for it. And then I also want to include this Glyph tool for it as well. No, these are going to be kind of standalone findings that you can add. So it doesn't have to be tied specifically to a specific diagnosis. This is a finding that you just want included, that you want the image available on your visit note as well. So when I tap on my Glyph tools, it's giving me the option to choose between which one of these 4 drawings do I want to go ahead and insert my glyph. So depending on, what your finding may be, you may choose different, different images to go ahead and apply your finding. First one I'm going to do, let's say, maybe we want to say the patient has maybe choroidal nevus. So I'm going to go ahead and let's do some drusen first. I'm going to go to the fundus drawing. Now, when I tap on my fundus drawing, you can see the list on the left-hand side of my screen. Now, I have a popular plans list that has a whole bunch of different things that are in here because I use these pretty regularly. If you guys have not used this yet, it might just default down to this plan section. But no matter what section you're in, you're going to notice that all of these options have a little asterisk next to them. And that's to remind you that when you select this, this is for you to then select the location of where you want this glyph to be inserted. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and we'll start off with our drusen. So when I tap on drusen, okay, I'm still on my fundus image. Now, wherever I tap my finger, or if you have a stylus, you could definitely use a stylus as well, but wherever I tap my finger, it's going to put that finding for me on the image. All right, so now you can see I tapped. I've got my drusen on there. And it's no longer that red dot that you would normally see whenever you're selecting location. It's an image that more resembles what that finding looks like. Now, a lot of people, when I add drusen, a lot of people want to come here and they just want to start tapping all over the place, in different areas. You actually don't need to do that. So let me show you this. Up at the very top right, there are some blue buttons. And one of them now, you see, it's going to say undo. So if I just want to remove some of those, I can just tap undo. And it takes me back just to the original one that I put on there. Now, the reason why I wanted to undo those is to show you that you can actually just modify the one that you've already placed on here. So if you want to go ahead and maybe increase the size of it, there's 2 dials to the right of where our drusen currently is. The first dial says rotate, and the second dial, it's hard to see on the screen, but the second dial is going to say scale. So if I just wanted to increase the size of this, I'm going to go ahead and just move my scale down, and that's going to increase the size of it. Okay, now if that's pointing in the wrong direction, I wanted it pointed a different way, I could then use my rotate, all right, and then I can just angle it in whatever direction I want. Okay, now this is something that will appear as a finding in your list of findings, but it'll also include this image on your visit note as well, so that whenever you're looking at the visit note, you can better see exactly where this finding was. Instead of it just saying left eye or right eye, it's going to show you the pinpoint location of where that drusen actually was. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and let me just show you what this looks like now. I'm going to save my visit note. Okay. And then I'm just going to go to my documents down at the very bottom right-hand side. Now, I haven't added any impressions and plans for this yet, so that's not going to be on here. But when I go to documents down at the bottom right by my finalized visit option, I can view my visit note from here. All right, so it says preliminary across it right now because it is not a finalized visit. But as I start to scroll down here, okay, first thing I see I've got my drusen on the left peripheral retina at 1. Okay, before, this said that everything was normal. But because we added that glyph, it overrode the normal finding, and it just plugged in exactly where we plugged that drusen glyph at. Okay, now in addition to that, as I start to scroll down, there's my image now. So I can always have this attached to my visit note. So when I come for future visits, if I want to look back and realize, okay, where was this drusen last time? I can look at the previous visit note and just see from my image, exactly what was going on with this patient during their last visit. Okay. All right, let me go ahead and I'm going to get back into my ocular exam room for a second. Okay. But those glyphs apply to many different things. I did drusen, but I mean, there's so many different findings in here that you guys can use this for. Once you kind of figure out what findings you're most regularly using at your office, it's good to kind of come in here and track down the findings that you're looking for. That way you can have that image and that capability of seeing a more pinpoint spot of where that finding was. So we'll just do another one for practice here. Let's say this time I want to do maybe choroidal nevus. I'll tap back on my fundus drawing, okay? And then I'll just pull my choroidal nevus off the popular plans list on the left, okay? So now when I tap on the image, it's no longer going to be that big yellow cluster of dots. It's going to be an image that more resembles the choroidal nevus, okay? But same thing applies here. If I want to go ahead and increase the size of it, I can move my scale to increase it, and then I can even angle it to whatever direction I want just by hitting that rotate option. Okay. Now, let's say if, maybe you added something in error. Maybe we put that drusen on there, but, maybe we did this on the wrong patient. So we just want to remove the glyph of the drusen. Anytime you want to take something off of here, if you look up at the very top left corner of your screen, there's a blue link that just says Edit Glyphs. So when I tap on Edit Glyphs, okay, this is showing me both of the glyphs that I currently have on here. So if I wanted to remove the drusen, or if I wanted to remove the choroidal nevus, whichever one I want to remove, I'm just going to go ahead and tap on the X next to it. All right, and then that takes you back. But we'll still have, when I check my quick impression edit here down at the bottom, I can still go to my exam details, and now I just have the drusen on there. I no longer have that choroidal nevus. Okay. But the options are pretty endless here, like that was just your fundus drawing, but just take a look at some of the other drawings that you guys have on here. We've got our external drawing with a list of several other findings that we can add. Okay, let's say chalazion. All right. Now that one pretty much more resembles what you're used to, the little red dot, but you can always increase size. You can always rotate it. Anything is possible with these. Right. And let's take a look at maybe our slit lamp drawing. Okay. Let's say we have a corneal abrasion. Okay. Once again, you can see they're always changing the image depending on what icon you're selecting. So every image that you see in here is going to have its own unique symbol to go ahead and add directly to your visit and add to your visit note. Let me go ahead and I'm just going to remove that one for now. Okay. All right. So like I said before, these glyph tools, these are kind of a standalone. These aren't something that you're putting in, like I'm not choosing my diagnosis and then I'm picking my plans and then I'm putting in a glyph tool with it. I'm doing this outside of the diagnosis. This is just a finding I want to add at any moment. So I don't have to pick a diagnosis first. At any moment, that glyph tool button will be available for you to go ahead and select and add whatever finding you feel fit for that patient. All right, so let's take a look now at our other tool that we want to talk about today, which is going to be our drawing board. All right, now the same way that we access these glyph tools is pretty similar to what we're going to do for this drawing board. Once again, this is only going to take place if you're using the pancake view. It's not available, I'm sorry, in the waffle view. So it's not available in the pancake view, but if you're in the waffle view, you can get into this ocular exam room, and then up on the top right, you have an option that just says draw. There's a blue link up on the top right corner that just says draw. Now, before I select that, when you look at this list on the right-hand side, you've got these different images of parts of the eye. My external eye, my slit lamp, fundus, cross-section, gonioscopy. Yeah, you can see the kind of images are almost endless here as far as where you can use this drawing feature. But this part's going to be important because before you select draw, you want to make sure the image on the screen is the one that you want to go ahead and draw on. So if I wanted to draw on the fundus image, I'd want to make sure I choose fundus first. Or if I want to draw on the slit lamp, I want to choose that first before selecting the draw. But I'm going to go back to my external eye for this one. And now up at the very top right, I'm just going to hit the option that says draw. Okay. And this is going to remind, well, depending on how old everyone is in here, this is going to remind you guys somewhat of the old Microsoft paintbrush when you were younger. I remember I had that in school when I was a kid. It looked very similar to this, where you can kind of use all these markers and pens and draw on whatever image you want. Very similar to what's going to happen here. Now, some of the ways that you can use this, let's say, for example, what if I want to say maybe this patient has a lesion under their eye? There's a couple different tools I can use to go ahead and document that. Now, when I look over at the left-hand side of my screen, right now, the first thing I'm on that's blinking on the left is going to be the pen. Okay, we're going to get to the pen in just a second, but underneath that, this one is what we call our marker. Okay, the marker is going to be more opaque. It's going to be more transparent so that you'd be able to kind of see through it. So a lot of times I like to use the marker for any kind of like rashes, any kind of redness, skin condition, or swelling, anything of that nature. So let's say, for example, on this one, I want to say this patient has a lesion. So over on the right-hand side of my screen, I do have another dial that goes up and down. And this is just determining the size of my brush stroke. So like if I just do this, okay, that's the size it's going to be. But if I increase this, your line's getting larger and larger. So it just depends on how big you want your line to be. Now you also have tools to just remove what you just did. Over on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little arrow that's pointing to the left. That is going to be your undo. So if I don't want that last line I placed on there, I'm going to tap undo, and then it's just going to remove that off of my drawing. And I can continue to do that until I get everything off that I don't want on there. Now, you can also choose your color as far as what color you want your marker to be. Right now, I've got the red selected up here, but I could change it to my orange, my yellow, my green, or I can even do a custom color. Down here at the bottom, the very last color that you see that kind of looks like a rainbow around it, when I tap on that, that's just going to basically give me a color wheel where I can go ahead and just exactly pinpoint what color I want to go ahead and use. But for this first scenario, like I said, we're going to be putting a lesion underneath our patient's eye. So I'm going to go ahead and select my red color. All right, and I'll maybe increase my marker size just a little bit. And we're going to go ahead and just put that right here. Okay. Now, if I want to put something on top of that lesion, then it might be good for me to go ahead and use my pen. So over on the left-hand side, once again, right now I'm on the marker still, but if I go to the one on top of it, now I've got my pen. All right, same thing applies on the right-hand side again. I can increase or decrease the size of the stroke of the pen, and I can change the color too. So if I just want to say, maybe they had a spot in this lesion, I can draw on top of it, and it's gonna show up on top of what you have for the marker. Not the only functionality you have here too. You can also label these things and leave messages about them as well. So when you look towards your left-hand side of the screen, once again, you're going to see the letter T. That's just for a text box. So if I want to just label what I'm putting here, and I can move this box wherever I want. So if I just want to put it right here so it's out the way, and I'm just going to type in lesion. Okay. All right. So now I've got my lesion on there, but it's not really specific as far as what that is directed towards. So in that case, what we have is we have an arrow that you can use to connect your note to the image that you placed on the screen. So over on the left-hand side of my screen, once again, I've got the little arrow I can tap on the arrow, and this, once again, you can use the dial on the right to select how thick or how thin you want that arrow to be. You can also pick the color of the arrow. Options are kind of endless as far as what colors and sizes you want to use for this. But if I just want to draw an arrow saying, hey, this is the lesion, okay, I can do that right on top of my page. Right? Now, a couple other things of functionality here. Down at the bottom left-hand side of your screen, there is a field at the very bottom left corner. It's going to say add to library. Right now, it's you have an option between yes or no. What this is used for is if I save this to my library, if I say yes for this, this would allow me to pull this image in on any other patient that I see. Now, this one, I might not do it because it's a lesion that's kind of specific to one patient's eye. But if you create a drawing that might be something that you may use on a regular basis, maybe about some redness around the eye or some swelling around the eye that, maybe you don't want to have to keep coming in here and creating this drawing each time you do it. You can create one and add it to your library. And then that way it would just allow you to pull it in on the next visit. And those are all going to be user specific. So if you create something here and you add it to your library, only the user who created it is going to have access to pull that library back in. Everybody would still have access to see any drawing that was added to the visit. Just as far as the library is concerned, that would just be the library for the one individual that created it. Okay. Now let me go ahead. I'm going to take some of this stuff off of here. And let's say next I want to go ahead and maybe we want to say the patient has some redness in the inside of their eye. We'll tap on the marker again. I'll choose my red color. And let's just go ahead and just put some redness right on the inside of their eye. Okay. And then what if I also want to go ahead and say maybe they have some swelling that's around their eyes? Well, I probably don't want to use that same red color because that might get a little misleading. So I can just come down to my color wheel down at the bottom right-hand side where the little rainbow color scheme is. And I can tap on it. Whoop. And then let's see. All right. So now I'm going to increase the size of my marker just a little bit. And so now I can take my finger and just kind of go all over where I want to go ahead and say that this patient has their swelling. So something like this might be something you may, want to go ahead and save into your library. Like if you just want to say, there's swelling around the eye, like I said, or if you wanted to use red and say there's some redness around the eye or red on the inside of the eye, you can always save it to your library. Now, I wouldn't recommend just hitting yes to add to library. First thing what you can do is up here on the top left corner of your screen, underneath my patient's name on the top left, I can name my drawing. So that way I have a better idea of what I want to pull in the future if I plan on using this again. So we'll say swelling with redness. Okay. And then so if I want to just save that image down at the bottom left, add to library, I can just go ahead and hit yes. Okay. Now, a couple of other tools on here as well that we didn't quite talk about. You also have underneath the letter T on the left-hand side, there is an eraser. And that's just if maybe you painted a little bit too far over and you want to kind of correct something. The eraser just allows you to just wipe out, any additional markings you don't want on there. And then we talked about down below that, the arrow pointing to the left, that's just an undo option. And then the arrow underneath that, the one that's pointing to the right, that's just a redo option. So if you deleted something and you wanted to put it back on there, you can hit the arrow that's pointing to the right. Okay. Now, looking up at the very top of my screen, let me see if that's there. Yep. So here at the very top of the screen, right above the external eye, you can see the library. So when I tap on the library dropdown, now I share a login with some other people that haven't really named some of these, but if I had named some of the drawings in here, this would be labeled with whatever I named it by. But these are all things saved in my library. So if I wanted to pull them in on a future visit, I can tap on what I want, and then it's pulling in some additional options for me. Just depends on, what you guys save and what you want in there. Okay. All right, let's see. One second, get this eraser out of here. Okay. Sorry, guys, for some reason my save button wasn't cooperating with me, so I'm just going to save this one more time. Okay. And then when you have the image you want, just go ahead and save it. And then when I save my visit note, this is also going to be a part of my visit note now. So if I were to go back to my documents down at the bottom right to take a look at my visit note. All right, we've got our preliminary note. You can see my findings are still updated from that glyph that we added. And then here's my fundus drawing with my drusen on it. And then a little bit lower, I've got the drawing that I went ahead and included myself as well. But like I said, the main thing here is, if you want to save these things for the future to use on other patients, it's all user specific. So one doctor can create whatever images they want to just pull in at any moment that they want, or you can just draw them right then and there when you have the patient with you. You just can't share the images from user to user, but everybody can still see it when you've applied it to a visit. So like if I applied this to a visit and then another doctor comes in, they're seeing the patient next time, they would still look at this visit note and still be able to see the images that were added, just so they can get a better grasp of exactly what was going on with this patient. All right, so let me jump back to my overview here. Okay. But just keep in mind, once again, this has to be done from the waffle view. So up on the top right, you've got the 6 white boxes. That is the waffle view. Because if I switch it back to my pancake view, you're not going to see an option to go ahead and add those glyphs or use that drawing board. So you want to make sure you're doing that directly from the ocular exam room. Now, you can always remove them from the pancake view. So for example, as I start to scroll down, I've got my fundus drawing here from my drusen. I've got my external drawing that we put in there. If I decide I don't want to go ahead and put that on there anymore, I can just go ahead and delete it off. And then it's no longer a part of that visit. It would remove it from the finding and it would take that image off of my visit note. All right. Do we have any questions?
Looks like we do not have any questions. However, I would like to remind everybody, if you have any questions, you can enter them using the Q&A icon on the top of your screen. We'll give it another minute to see if any questions come through. Okay, it does not look like we have any questions today. So with that, I would like you to know, if you are looking for more training, you can check out our other learning options, such as documentation, tutorials and walkthroughs, role-based training, additional training webinars, one-on-one virtual training, and on-site training or consultations. And you can learn more at eyefinity.com/education. The link is on your screen there. And with that, again, I would like to thank you, Mike, for your time and for the valuable information you shared with us. And thank you to everyone on the line for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. This concludes our presentation.
Thank you.